Hello and welcome to my life. Hello and welcome to my life. If you are on this live, you can share. You can share. I want us to talk a bit. I want us to discuss a bit. We cannot be talking about social topics or societal topics all the time, and then we really forget a topic that concerns all the black color people living in Africa. I am inspired to do this video or to come live today because I read a post somewhere online where someone was actually saying something that makes sense. So I now decided to make a video to bring it out. Let us discuss about it. Let's talk about it because only we Africans can make our continent good again. Only we Africans can make our continent better again. Only we Africans can build our own home. Africa is our home. It is our privilege to be African. It is our right to be, to make, and to live in the best way we can in Africa. Now, I am a little bit worried because I don't usually want to enter into political matters, but I think that as a sane person, as an individual, we can, talk some sensible things when we find them online rather than just talk about gossips all the time. This is a very healthy topic, and then we can make some more sense out of it. So I have been wondering, most countries in Africa have had independence like 50 years today, some 60, some 52, some 55, at least for 50 years. And we all understand that based on the colonial era, the Europeans, they did whatever they did to Africa. Personally, I don't believe, or I don't like to lay blame on something that has already passed. I always like to look forward on how things can get better, on how things can be made better. That is why I decided to make a video on this topic today. I know that so many people don't like topics like this, but as a person, we must talk about the things that really concern us, the things that really make sense, the things that can define some of okay. Now, Africa is underdeveloped, but yet it is the richest continent with all the natural resources. Now, why is Africa so poor even when we have too many resources available before us? I think that it is a thing of the mindset. It is the way we are wired. It is a thought pattern, would I say, mistake or something. We don't think upright. We don't think correctly. That is why we are still the way we are today. I don't want to sound offensive, but I am trying to expose some things that we can learn and then understand better and then make sense out of it. Why is Africa still so poor after all the troubles they have been through, and with the presence of all the resources, I mean the natural resources that they have? Why is Africa so poor? And the second question I am asking today on this live: why are Africans not interested in the resources that they have? The whole world is interested in the resources of Africa. Only Africa is not interested in these resources. And they stay the same way they are. They remain the same way they are. Those are the things I want us to discuss on this video today. I have some things to share on those topics that I mentioned. Okay, now for one, I found this video online that explained certain things that many African people or people from the African descent do not understand. And I am willing, okay, yeah, and I think that we can talk about it. Now, on this video, it was a white guy. He was very blunt. I would have played the video here, but I can't find it anymore where I saw it because I saved it in another phone and the phone is not charged as I wanted to do this video now. He was saying basically in the video that they have been accusing the Europeans and other nationalities of the ordeals that happened to Africa. That yes, indeed, Africa was discovered. Indeed, Africa was partitioned. Indeed, Africa was colonized. Indeed, they were ripped off a lot of things, their people, their resources, so many things they were ripped off. But he asked a big question, and I want to ask that question here today. He asked that these things could not be possible except some people of the African descent allowed for these things to occur. He's right, whether you like it or not. I think the white guy is right. Now, assuming slavery and slave trade was forceful, but colonialism and independence today, were they equally forceful as slavery and slave trade era? In that era, things were looted from Africa, they were taken by force. But after that era, when Africa began to experience peace and its stuff left for Africans to enjoy, to manage, were they still being used as before? Was force being used on them like before? Now, the thing is, in the colonial era, when Africa was colonized, they all had colonial masters who, for one reason or the others, did everything possible to leave Africans under subjection. But if you look at it critically, it is because a few Africans accepted for the entire population to be subjected to the kind of treatment that Africa was going through. If you look at the British rule, it was divide and rule. It means that they would divide the population into small segments and then have people chosen from among them to rule them, to control them, to subdue them. Since they did not understand the people well, so they had to enter into the mind of one or two people who agree to work with them for little benefits and then give them the responsibility of controlling all the others to maintain peace. I beg to differ. I beg to differ a bit or digress a bit. I think it is the same thing that is happening even today after independence. After all the countries have been giving back their rights as a nation, they have been giving back their rights as a people to live the way they want to live. But yet, there's no form of development. But yet, there is nothing for a common African child to hold on to. No infrastructure. Life is still as hard as hell. I think it is not only the responsibility of the Europeans who came. They can be chiefly held responsible, but they are not the only propounders of the malaise of the African continent, of the pain of the African continent. I am saying so because we have leaders today, even as democratic as Africans claim to be, who are not serving the interest of the people. They are just not serving the interest of the people. They are not seeing the people for who they represent, for who they were voted into power for. We don't live with the Europeans here in Africa. They just come to reap Africa from its resources. Now, how is this possible? If not that our leaders give them, if not that our leaders are asking for things like this. I had earlier mentioned that it is a mindset problem. Maybe if we begin to correct our mindset, maybe if we begin to make some corrections at the level of the way we see one another, then maybe we can become better. No one feels for the other as much to be able to do things that will favor the other person. It is a shame. I have been thinking, if we Africans are not selfish, we won't be suffering the way we are suffering today. We won't be backward the way we are today. We won't be so underdeveloped like we are today. How on earth can we not feel our own pain? A pain that directly affects us. A pain for one should be a pain for all. That is what I think. Now, there's this video I want us to listen to throw more light, particularly on why Africa is still so poor and underdeveloped.
How could a place that holds trillions of dollars in rare minerals, gems, and other resources be so incredibly impoverished? And for many, the answer is simple enough. Africa is poor because of the legacy of colonialism. The narrative usually goes something like this. Europe's great powers invaded, conquered, and pillaged Africa of its raw resources, leaving the continent impoverished to this very day. Now, more than 60 years after the end of colonial rule, the continent is still struggling to overcome of exploitation at the hands of the European powers. It's a compelling narrative, and many people believe it. But the problem is, it doesn't seem to be telling the whole story, and here's the proof. Consider the story of another ex-colony that gained its independence around the same time as most African nations. Singapore, a former British colony with virtually no natural resources, has risen to become one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Today, Singapore is actually richer on a per capita basis than its former colonizer. So
did you hear that? Today, Singapore is actually richer than its former colonizers. I think it is a thing of mindset. It is a thing of mindset. Africans need to change their mindset. They need to start feeling for each other to make positive change. You have so many resources, but yet you have no infrastructure, nothing to hold up to. But yet you keep blaming people for the way you are. Let's continue to listen to the guy.
Colonialism doesn't tell the entire story there. Is there anything else that can explain why Africa specifically is so poor? Well, one interesting factor is Africa's geography. The economist Thomas Sowell points out that bad geography has hindered the continent's development for centuries and continues to do so to this very day. For example, while Europe's long coastline and plentiful natural harbors helped to facilitate a strong maritime trade all the way back to classical antiquity, Africa has had few of these features. In fact, the continent actually has less coastline than Europe, despite the fact that it's much bigger. It has very few deep water ports, and with the exception of the Nile, none of Africa's major rivers are easily navigable all the way to the ocean. These geographical problems create huge challenges to trade in Africa, but geography is not destiny. Just look at Botswana. This sub-Saharan country has set records for economic growth despite being landlocked in the middle of the Kalahari Desert. While Botswana does have plenty of diamonds, it lacks many of the other major natural resources, rivers, or harbors that many of its neighbors do. And yet, Botswana is one of the richest nations in Africa with a strong and growing economy. The story of both Botswana and Singapore show that the true culprits behind Africa's persistent poverty has to be something else. Now consider this. In the Tanzanian constitution in 1965, it discussed the government's role to, quote, prevent the accumulation of wealth to an extent which is inconsistent with the existence of a classless society. This Marxist sentiment was not unusual in sub-Saharan African governments post-colonialism. The bottom line is, many former colonies have not only overcome prior subjugation, but have thrived both politically and economically. But they all seem to have something in common. Instead of trading colonialism for Marx, they adopted systems which encouraged private property rights while at the same time embracing stable governments which established dependable legal systems and then courted foreign investment. The good news is there is hope for countries still struggling to develop, but history suggests that it will come not only through political freedom, but economic freedom as well.
The African continent is...
Wow. Did you hear that? First, they suggested it was because of economic underdevelopment. But there are countries like Namibia who are breaking free. Botswana, rather, who are breaking free from that. So why do we continue to, hold the whites, the Europeans, responsible for us not being able to think, for us not being able to feel for our children, for ourselves? We are poor because we don't reason well, because we don't think well. It is just our mindset that we have. If a day comes that Africa begins to desire better life, begin to desire why their brothers should be in a good position, begin to desire why the continent as a whole can get better, Africa is going to be developed and rich. Too many resources everywhere, but no one is interested. No one. All they are interested in is an imaginary country. No roads, no hospitals, nothing. I wonder the kind of country or continent we will have in 20 years, in 10 years, if our narrative, if our mindset cannot change, if our views about the future cannot change. It's disheartening to know that the whole world feeds from the resources of Africans, but only Africa doesn't feed. Even if they feed, they don't feed well from their own resources. Is it a curse or what? Well, I think that it is time to stop blaming others for our predicament. Rather, we can look for solutions for the predicaments that we face. We can look forward to make things better for us and for our generations yet to come. The physical things we see, we can make use of them. If for any reason we are hoping for something to come in the future, like the imaginary country build of gold that we're looking forward to, that one is in the future. But now in the present, we can do what is right. We can do something for ourselves and for our generations yet to come. We are a beautiful continent, a rich continent, but almost little or nothing to show for. I also want to commend the leaders who are working for the people and not against the people, because majority of the leaders are working against the people and not for the people. We can understand certain things before we bring them into our homes, before we bring them into our continent, before we bring them into our countries. We cannot be the richest continent in the world in terms of resources, but yet the poorest in terms of infrastructures. As always, whatever your comments are, leave them on the comment section. I just needed to talk about this because I have been bothered about it for a while. We can make it better. We can make Africa great again. We can live and be happy. If it's your first time on my video, like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Bye.